The corridor outside Princess Charlotte's learning suite was monitored by 3 cameras and a biometric door lock that rarely changed status. Royal Guard Elias Carter slowed when the wall tablet beside the door flashed a silent alert. The supervision log showed an active access request that had not been scheduled. Then he heard it. Charlotte's voice from inside, tight with fear. Carter checked the live system feed again. Someone had just tried to override the room. The corridor outside Princess Charlotte's private learning suite was usually quiet during the evening study hours, but the silence tonight carried a faint tension that Royal Guard Elias Carter noticed immediately. The long hallway was softly illuminated by recessed ceiling lights and monitored by a line of discrete AI security cameras embedded into the upper walls. Carter stood beside the suite entrance in his red ceremonial guard uniform, maintaining the still posture expected from palace protection officers assigned to the Royal Children's Wing. In front of him, the corridor security tablet mounted beside the biometric door panel displayed a small flashing notification. It was not an alarm, only a minor access alert, but Carter had learned over years of service that even minor system irregularities deserved careful attention. He tapped the tablet screen with his gloved finger and opened the security record associated with the notification. The palace system responded instantly, displaying a digital log entry created only 30 seconds earlier. Temporary digital override detected. Source: internal palace network. Door access unlocked. Carter studied the line carefully. The princess's learning suite was equipped with multiple security layers, biometric recognition, scheduled access permissions, and real-time monitoring through the palace protection network. Temporary overrides were occasionally used by authorized palace staff, but they always appeared in the scheduling system beforehand. Carter opened the adjacent schedule panel. The display showed the evening timetable for the princess's educational activities. The private tutoring session had ended 20 minutes earlier. After that, the room should have been empty, except for Charlotte herself completing a reading assignment on the suite's digital learning display. No staff visits were scheduled. No maintenance work was authorized. Carter glanced at the biometric door panel beside him. The light indicator glowed green, confirming the door had recently unlocked and relocked within the system cycle. Yet no one had exited the room through the corridor. He would have seen them. Carter tapped another menu and opened the internal room status monitor. According to the sensor system inside the suite, Princess Charlotte remained inside the room, but the entry log still showed the temporary override had been issued. The situation made no immediate sense. Carter looked toward the door again, listening carefully. The thick, sound-insulated walls of the learning suite normally muffled interior noise, but faint sounds could still travel through the door panel if someone spoke loudly. For several seconds he heard nothing. Then a quiet voice reached him from inside the room. "Hello?" The voice was small, uncertain. "Charlotte." Carter leaned slightly closer to the door, his expression tightening as he listened. "Is someone there?" she called again. The child's voice carried a trace of nervous confusion. Carter straightened slowly. If the door had been opened by an authorized person, Charlotte would not be calling out like that. The security tablet still showed the override had originated from somewhere inside the palace network. Carter was about to run a deeper trace when footsteps approached quickly from the far end of the corridor. Carter looked up from the tablet as the approaching figure entered the corridor lights. Camilla moved toward him with purposeful steps, accompanied by a palace attendant several meters behind her. The queen consort's presence in the children's wing at this hour was unexpected. Carter immediately shifted into formal posture, his expression respectful but attentive. Camilla stopped beside the suite door, her gaze moving briefly toward the biometric panel before returning to Carter. "Guard," she said, her tone controlled but urgent. "I need the door opened." Carter nodded slightly in acknowledgement, though he did not move toward the lock. Your Majesty, the security system has registered an access irregularity. Camilla glanced toward the door as Charlotte's voice sounded faintly again from inside. Is someone outside? The princess called. The concern in the child's voice was now unmistakable. Camilla's expression hardened slightly. You hear that? Charlotte is frightened. Open the door. Carter kept his posture steady. Years of royal protection training had conditioned him to remain calm under pressure, regardless of who stood in front of him. The suite was unlocked moments ago through a temporary digital override. There is no scheduled entry recorded in the palace system. Camilla's eyes narrowed slightly, though her voice remained composed. I'm here now. That should resolve your concern. Carter glanced down at the corridor tablet again. The override command still displayed on the screen, its origin point listed only as an internal network device rather than a specific authorized terminal. That detail alone was unusual enough to justify caution. From inside the room, Charlotte spoke again, her voice quieter now. Someone was here earlier. Carter felt a subtle tightening in his chest. The child's statement confirmed what the security log already suggested. The door had been opened before Camilla arrived. Carter lifted his hand to the encrypted earpiece hidden beneath the collar of his uniform. Control, he said quietly into the channel. This is Guard Carter at the Children's Wing Learning Suite. I need verification on a temporary override command issued to this door. The Palace Security Command Center responded almost immediately. Stand by. Camilla watched him with visible impatience. Guard Carter, I am requesting entry. Carter kept his posture respectful but unwavering. Yes, Your Majesty, and I will open the door as soon as the system anomaly is verified. Behind the reinforced door panel, Princess Charlotte's voice came once more, softer but still uneasy. Please don't let them come back. Carter's eyes shifted briefly toward the door, then back to the flashing override alert still glowing on the security tablet. The system had unlocked the suite once already tonight, and no one inside the palace network seemed to know who had issued the command. Royal Guard Elias Carter remained positioned directly beside the learning suite door, his posture straight and controlled despite the growing tension in the corridor. The security tablet continued to display the temporary override alert, its quiet blinking icon reflecting faintly against the polished surface of the biometric panel. Camilla stood only a step away now, her presence commanding the hallway with the calm authority expected of a senior royal. Yet Carter did not reach for the door controls. Years of royal protection training had taught him a simple rule that stood above personal pressure or rank. When the system showed an unauthorized digital override involving a protected child, verification came before action. Inside the room, Princess Charlotte's voice had gone quiet again, though the earlier unease in her tone still lingered in Carter's mind. Through the encrypted earpiece hidden beneath his uniform collar, the Palace Security Command Center finally responded. Guard Carter, we are reviewing the override entry now, the calm voice of the duty supervisor said. Stand by. Carter acknowledged the message with a slight tap on the earpiece. Camilla watched him carefully. You are delaying access to my granddaughter, she said, her voice measured but firm. Carter kept his tone respectful. Your Majesty, the system recorded an unauthorized digital override on this door less than 2 minutes ago. Camilla glanced briefly at the security tablet, but did not step closer to read it. Then someone inside the palace opened the door, she replied, which means there is no threat. Carter knew the reasoning sounded logical on the surface. The palace network was heavily secured, and internal overrides were normally issued only by authorized staff devices. But the system log displayed no identity attached to the command, only the vague reference to an internal network source. That detail alone made the situation unusual enough to require confirmation. Carter kept his eyes on the door for a moment, listening again for movement from inside the room. He could hear faint motion now, perhaps Charlotte shifting near the desk or walking quietly across the suite floor. The princess was safe for the moment, but the uncertainty surrounding the earlier override still remained unresolved. Camilla crossed her arms slightly. "Guard Carter," she said more firmly, "I am instructing you to open the door." Carter lowered his voice as he answered, "With respect, Your Majesty, I must wait for verification from the command center before granting entry." The statement hung in the corridor for several seconds. Even the palace attendant standing further back seemed to sense the unusual tension between rank and protocol. Then Charlotte's voice sounded again through the door. "Please hurry." The words were soft but clearly anxious. Carter's expression remained steady, but the urgency in Charlotte's voice strengthened his resolve rather than weakening it. If someone had accessed the suite earlier using an unidentified override, opening the door immediately without confirming the source could potentially compromise the very protections meant to keep the child safe. Through his earpiece, the command center spoke again. "Guard Carter, initial check confirms no scheduled access was issued to that room tonight." Carter felt a quiet confirmation of his concern. "Understood," he replied quietly. Camilla's patience was visibly thinning now. "You are refusing a direct request from me," she said. Carter met her gaze respectfully. "I am following Palace Child Protection Protocol, Your Majesty." The corridor security tablet emitted a soft tone as a new data panel appeared on the screen. Carter glanced down. The command center had begun tracing the origin of the override signal through the palace network. The device identification field remained incomplete, showing only a partial digital signature. That meant the command had been issued from a portable administrative tablet rather than a fixed security terminal. Carter looked back at the door again. "Charlotte," he called gently through the panel, "this is Guard Carter. Are you safe inside the room?" A brief pause followed. Then the princess answered quietly, "Yes, but someone came in earlier." Carter exchanged a quick glance with Camilla. The statement confirmed that the override entry had not been accidental. Someone had physically entered the room before leaving again. Through the earpiece, the command center spoke once more. "Carter, we are tracing the device that issued the override. It appears to be a portable administrative tablet." Carter's attention sharpened immediately. Portable administrative tablets were used by certain palace departments, maintenance teams, network technicians, and senior security staff. But none of those personnel should have been operating inside the children's wing at this hour. Carter responded calmly. "Control, confirm location of the device." A few seconds passed. Then the voice returned with a new edge of concern. "Stand by." The signal originated inside the palace network, but the tablet should not be active in that sector. Carter remained in position beside the door, one hand resting near the biometric panel, while his eyes scanned the quiet corridor. What had begun as a simple access irregularity was now starting to resemble something more serious, and until the source of that override command was identified, Carter knew one thing with absolute certainty. No one, regardless of rank, was entering that room yet. Royal Guard Elias Carter remained stationed beside the learning suite door as the palace corridor settled into a tense quiet. The soft ceiling lights reflected across the polished floor, while the corridor cameras continued their silent observation above. Carter's attention moved briefly from the biometric panel to the security tablet mounted on the wall, where the palace command center had begun streaming live diagnostic data. Camilla stood a few steps away now, her earlier urgency replaced with a more measured silence as the situation slowly shifted from a simple delay into a formal security matter. Through Carter's encrypted earpiece, the voice of the command center technician returned. "Guard Carter, we've traced the override signal to a portable administrative tablet registered to Palace Maintenance Services." Carter's eyes narrowed slightly. Maintenance devices were issued to specialized technical teams responsible for infrastructure repairs, system calibration, and network diagnostics. They carried limited administrative permissions that allowed them to temporarily unlock secured doors when authorized work orders were active. But those devices were strictly restricted to specific operational zones. "Confirm the device authorization schedule," Carter replied quietly. A few seconds passed before the technician answered again. No maintenance activity was scheduled in the children's wing tonight. Carter glanced down the corridor, instinctively scanning both directions, even though the cameras and nearby guard stations already monitored the area. Camilla watched him carefully. "What does that mean?" she asked. Carter answered calmly. "It means the device used to open this door should not have been operating in this sector." The security tablet displayed additional information as the command center deepened its trace through the Palace network. A device identification number appeared on the screen, along with a connection timestamp that matched the earlier 3-minute override window. The tablet's network handshake had been detected briefly before disconnecting from the system. Carter leaned slightly closer to the screen. The device signal had not only opened the door, it had also briefly connected to the wall security console located inside Charlotte's learning suite. That console controlled local security settings for the room, door permissions, emergency alerts, and internal sensor calibration. Carter felt a quiet tightening in his chest. Whoever had entered the room earlier had not simply opened the door, they had accessed the suite's internal security controls. Through his earpiece, the technician spoke again, this time more urgently. "Carter, we're seeing partial configuration changes attempted on the suite's security console." Carter remained perfectly still beside the door. The corridor grew even quieter as the seriousness of the discovery settled over the small group standing outside the learning suite. Camilla looked toward the door again, her earlier impatience now replaced with a more measured silence as the situation slowly shifted from a simple delay into a formal security matter. Through Carter's encrypted earpiece, the voice of the command center technician continued. "Carter, we're attempting to track the device's current location, but the device disconnected from the network immediately after leaving the suite." That detail increased Carter's concern further. Administrative tablets normally remained connected to the Palace network continuously while in use. Disconnecting immediately after issuing a command was unusual unless someone deliberately powered down the device. Carter spoke calmly into the channel. "Control, initiate quiet corridor security for the children's wing. No public alert." The technician acknowledged the order. "Understood. Additional guards are being repositioned now." Within moments, Carter could hear faint radio confirmations from other Palace security teams moving discreetly into nearby hallways. No alarms sounded, no visible commotion disturbed the Palace calm, but the security net around the children's wing was tightening. Carter returned his focus to the door in front of him. Somewhere inside the Palace, someone had entered a protected royal room using a device that should not have been there and had attempted to modify the digital permissions controlling who could enter Charlotte's private quarters later that night. The corridor outside the learning suite remained controlled and quiet as additional Palace guards moved into nearby hallways without drawing attention. Their footsteps were soft against the carpeted floors, their presence blending naturally into the normal rhythm of Palace security rotations. Elias Carter stayed exactly where he had been since the situation began, standing beside the biometric door panel with the security tablet still active beside him. On the screen, the Palace Command Center continued analyzing the incomplete configuration changes detected on the room's internal security console. Camilla stood several steps away now, her expression more thoughtful than impatient as the seriousness of the situation became clearer. Through Carter's earpiece, the Command Center supervisor spoke again. "Carter, we are preparing to override the suite lock remotely through master control. Once the door opens, maintain position and confirm Charlotte's safety before anyone enters. Carter responded quietly, "Understood." The palace security network had a final level of access reserved for command supervisors, allowing them to unlock protected rooms directly through the central system if a potential breach was suspected. Carter stepped slightly aside from the biometric panel, but remained positioned in front of the door. A soft mechanical tone sounded from the panel as the lock disengaged under remote authorization. The reinforced door opened slowly inward. Carter moved first, stepping carefully into the learning suite while keeping his posture calm to avoid alarming the child inside. The room was softly lit by the digital study display mounted on the wall and a desk lamp near Charlotte's reading table. The princess sat in the chair beside the desk, her tablet lying untouched on the surface in front of her. When she saw Carter enter, her shoulders relaxed slightly. "Hello, Your Highness," Carter said gently. "Are you all right?" Charlotte nodded, though her expression still showed the lingering unease of someone who had witnessed something she did not fully understand. Carter scanned the room quickly with trained precision. Nothing appeared disturbed. The windows remained sealed. The digital learning screen still displayed the paused reading lesson. But the wall-mounted security console near the door, the panel used to adjust the room's local security permissions, showed a faint active glow, confirming it had recently been accessed. Carter stepped further inside while the corridor door remained open behind him. Charlotte looked toward Carter as he approached the desk, her voice quiet but steady. "Someone came in earlier." Carter knelt slightly so his height would not feel intimidating to the child. "Can you tell me what happened?" he asked calmly. Charlotte fought for a moment before answering. "I was reading on the big screen," she said, pointing briefly toward the wall display. Then the door opened. Carter listened carefully, his attention focused completely on her words. "Did you recognize the person?" Charlotte shook her head. "No, they had a tablet in their hand." Carter glanced briefly toward the wall security console again. The detail matched exactly what the command center had already discovered in the system logs. Charlotte continued speaking, describing the moment as she remembered it. "They walked over there," she said, pointing directly toward the security console mounted beside the door. "They touched the screen for a little bit." Carter asked the next question gently. "Did they say anything to you?" Charlotte shook her head again. "I asked who they were. Then they looked at me and left really fast." Carter rose slowly to his feet and stepped toward the security console. The glowing screen displayed a partially completed configuration panel, exactly as the technicians in the command center had described. Several access fields had been opened, but never successfully saved before the connection was terminated. Carter spoke quietly into his earpiece. "Control, confirming Charlotte's statement. Unknown individual accessed the room console using a tablet device and exited immediately after being noticed." The supervisor's voice returned quickly. "Logs match her description. Several permission settings were opened but not successfully saved." Carter turned back toward Charlotte, offering her a reassuring nod. "You did the right thing by speaking up," he told her calmly. In the doorway behind him, Camilla stepped into the room now that the security team had confirmed the environment was secure. Carter remained focused on the glowing console screen for another moment. Whoever had entered this room had clearly intended to change the digital permissions, protecting Charlotte's private living quarters. But the moment the child noticed and spoke to them, they had abandoned the attempt and disconnected from the network before the changes could be finalized. The learning suite remained calm once the immediate security check was completed, but the atmosphere inside the room carried a quiet seriousness that had not been present earlier that evening. Elias Carter stood near the wall security console, carefully reviewing the partially altered configuration fields still displayed on the screen. Through the open doorway, 2 additional palace guards had taken position in the corridor to secure the children's wing, while the command center continued examining the network logs. Camilla moved closer to Charlotte, resting a reassuring hand on the child's shoulder while listening to Carter's brief report to the command center. Control confirming that no final changes were committed to the access system, Carter said into his encrypted earpiece. The console shows incomplete permission edits only. The supervisor responded moments later. That matches what we're seeing from here. Whoever accessed the console attempted to alter the evening entry permissions for Charlotte's residential suite, but disconnected before the system accepted the changes. Carter studied the console interface again. The attempted edit had targeted the time-based access control governing who could enter Charlotte's private living quarters after nightfall. If the change had been completed, someone could potentially have opened her suite door later that evening using a valid digital key without triggering an alarm. Charlotte looked up at Carter from her chair. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked quietly. Carter turned toward her immediately, his tone calm and reassuring. "No, Your Highness," he said. "You did exactly the right thing by asking who the person was." Camilla nodded in agreement, her expression softer now that the immediate concern for Charlotte's safety had passed. Carter stepped back toward the door and looked once more at the corridor security tablet mounted beside the biometric panel. The command center had now restored the Learning Suite's access permissions to their original settings, ensuring that no residual changes from the attempted override remained active in the system. Yet the central question remained unanswered. Someone inside the palace had used a maintenance administrative tablet to open the Learning Suite and access the internal security console. Carter knew that if the door had been opened immediately when Camilla first requested entry, the partially altered configuration might have been saved before technicians detected the change. Later that evening, Carter stood inside the palace security office as the final system review concluded. Large digital displays along the wall showed the completed trace analysis conducted by the palace network technicians. The administrative tablet used to issue the override had been registered to a maintenance equipment pool, but its activation inside the children's wing had been unauthorized. The device had disconnected from the network before its exact physical location could be tracked. One of the security supervisors turned from the display toward Carter. "Your delay at the door prevented the system from finalizing the altered permissions," the supervisor explained. "The override sequence required one more access confirmation to complete the change." Carter nodded slightly, listening. The supervisor continued. "If the door had been opened immediately, the console could have accepted the new permissions before we detected the irregularity." Carter understood the implication clearly. Someone had attempted to quietly modify the digital access rules governing Charlotte's private quarters, most likely planning to return later when the palace corridors were quieter. But because Carter had insisted on verifying the system irregularity before allowing anyone inside the suite, the attempted change had remained incomplete. The supervisor finished reviewing the report and then closed the display panel. "Your response followed the correct rule," he said. "Verify every irregularity before granting access." Carter returned to the corridor outside Charlotte's suite shortly afterwards, resuming his normal guard position as the palace gradually returned to its usual calm rhythm. The security tablet beside the door now displayed a clean system log with no alerts. Yet Carter knew the events of the evening would remain recorded in the Palace Protection Archive. His decision briefly delayed a senior royal's request, something guards were never comfortable doing, but the rule that governed royal protection had proven itself once again. Rank never replaced protocol when a child's safety was involved.